This is WUSB Stony Brook. It's a sports section. Matt Mankiewich, Ken Fermin here until midnight. We're colleged out, so now we get to talk about some good news in the National Football League. Or do we talk about the bad news first? We talk about Thursday, we talk about today.
I'll do chronologically, I think, with the Giants. Well, we do good and bad with the Giants, considering they played Monday and Sunday, so double the fun there.
Yeah. So, double the fun. Well, the Giants won again today.
Oh, they won today, yeah.
Yeah. So, they beat the Las Vegas Raiders 23-16. And in a very similar fashion, not necessarily a quarterback throwing for 400 yards, in a similar fashion to the Jets in that it was probably the best played game they've had all year.
Yeah, agreed. Then just adding on to it too, we'll do 2-1. They lost the Monday night game against Kansas City 20-17, and
Right.
that game was more routine to the Giants we've been seeing all season long. A lot of conservative play from Joe Judge's crew and his play calling. The coaching wasn't really great outside of Patrick Graham, who I thought had a great game plan overall. And there's a lot of issues with this team's ability to close games, capitalize in the red zone, and play from behind. I think they took that game on Monday and really used that as a template for today's game in the sense of just doing the opposite of everything they did there. And it took a lot. It took a lot not only on their end, but also for the Raiders to make mistakes. But unlike Monday's game, where the Giants failed to capitalize on the Chiefs' mistakes, this time the Giants were able to force 3 enormous turnovers and turn them into points.
Interceptions and fumbles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the game plan was different from the start because they really didn't hide the fact they were going to ram the ball down the Las Vegas defense's throats, Matt. They were a lot of heavy personnel. They had a lot of six offensive tackles set up on their lines. Not really relying too much on receivers at all during the game. And they really handed the ball off a lot to Devontae Booker. And in the first drive alone, he ran 3 times, got 26 yards, and ultimately helped the Giants start off the game with the lead. He ended up with a great afternoon, 21 carries, 99 yards in total.
The defense won this game, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In traditional Giant fashion, no less.
Yeah, that's right.
The offense takes care of the ball, and the defense takes care of the points. And the pick six was the turning point of the game.
Yeah,
stopping the last Vegas drive on a fumble. That was, of course, what sealed the deal. But the defense kept the pressure on, and the defense really set the tone for the game, which is what we've been waiting for years now from the Giants defense.
Yeah.
And if they keep playing like this, there was a turnaround on the horizon. Again, not necessarily this year, but you want to know something?
Long-term thinking.
It's 3-6, and you take a look at the NFC East.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, we were talking about the Seawolves 3 weeks ago, and they had no hope for them. Well, guess what? The Eagles are 3-6, the Giants are 3-6, and the Washington football team is 2-6. Yeah. And of course Dallas is 6-2.
They lost today, though.
You take a look at, other than the leader, NFC South is pretty strong top to bottom. But you got a whole bunch of teams hanging around there with 3-5, 3-6 records. And when you're only just past the halfway point of the season, you got to be thinking. But the problem is, we were doing this last week with the Jets.
Yeah. Okay. You don't want to get your hopes up because they all come back. You don't want to
get your hope up.
Yeah. But we will say this, though, because I think Giants do deserve, that credit today. Because, again, we'll go back to the Monday game. They were up 17-14, but they were unable to hold what was a really lackluster performance from the Chiefs' offense. And ultimately, essentially just let the Chiefs walk down to the end zone, gain a touchdown. And when they were trailing 2017, the Giants had no life on offense. At least here, the offense showed a little bit of life. I thought Evan Ingram probably played his best game, definitely played his best game of the season, maybe his best game in a long time, maybe even ever, from what I remember. Made a great 50-50 ball, 30-yard touchdown catch against Jonathan Abram to give the Giants the lead. But on top of that as well, defensively, as we said, with not only the picks, but what turned out to be the game winner was a great strip sack against David Carr, and ultimately allowing the Giants to recover the ball and milk the clock. The Giants were really impressive, I think, Matt, to your point, because they gave up 6 separate trips to the red zone for the Raiders, but they were only able to score a touchdown on their first, forced to settle on field goals with the next 4, and missed with what could have tied the game, a field goal late in the fourth quarter, ultimately costing the Raiders.
Hey, even in the Lawrence Taylor era, the offense would generate that, and the defense would stomp on the opposing team just enough for that to work. Yeah. I mean, I still remember vividly an NFC championship against the San Francisco 49ers where they won it 15-13. 5 field goals. Just good enough.
That's
we
right.
talk about just good enough.
Yeah, when you look at the X factors for this game for the Giants, obviously Devontae Booker on the ground. The Raiders really didn't have much of an answer for the ground game. It was better than the passing game. The Giants didn't even have really that many receivers available. It was kind of like a hockey game where they were just substituting receivers in and out because everyone's so banged up. I mean, this I think Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph may have led the game in receptions, while the receivers, Galladay came back. He only had 2 catches. Kadarius Toney only had 1. For some reason, he was seated out. I don't really know why. Maybe injury. But the stars, as you said, really were the defense. Xavier McKinney with 2 picks, including a game-winning interception, go-ahead interception in I think the second quarter. And as well as another one that saved the Giants' skin on what was a risky pass. But Quincy Road as well, the rookie linebacker, knocking the ball away, allowing Leonard Williams to pounce on it and get the ball back. And even a second-round pick like Azeez Ojulari had 5.5 sacks, which is tied with Leonard Williams for the team lead this season. So I think these young guys are really starting to step up. Long-term, obviously, nothing to get too excited about this week. They barely hung on for the win, but, it's better than most weeks, or even Monday night where they couldn't hang on to the win against Kansas.
And I think, you don't let yourself get too high. You don't let yourself get too low. But like I said last week, enjoy it. Because
exactly.
We do have to segue over
I would say the Jets, right? And the sad part for Giants fans, too, before we switch, is this 3-6 record is the best record they've had since they've been to the playoffs 5 years ago. So, don't get too many days to celebrate. But the Giants and Jets, once again, I think tied with the worst record since 2016. So, there you go.
Yeah, we are going through a malaise era in football. We've talked about this, that we have not seen since the 1970s when neither team went to the playoffs the entire decade. But
after there.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's one of the reasons why people of a certain age have favorite out-of-town teams. And Mike Vaccaro, of all people, because he's one of those people of a certain age. He's only 2 years younger than me. He actually wrote a column about it in the Post a couple of weeks ago about that very thing, about that whole generation of fans who want nothing to do with the local teams. Could name the starting lineup of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but not their local team, neither the Jets nor the Giants.
Yeah, I can't blame them watching that Jets game on Thursday. I mean, the Jets defense in particular, man, they were embarrassed. First 7 drives the Colts had 6 touchdowns. Unbelievable in the NFL.
They stomped on them. Mm-hmm. And it kind of killed everything.
Yeah.
All the hope that you had from last week, and you were hoping, I even drew the comparisons to 1999 myself, We mentioned this last week when Vinny Testaverde went down in week 1. They went 2-6 the first half of the season trying to find a decent quarterback. Found Ray Lucas, went 6-2 the rest of the year. Maybe, just maybe the Jets will make the second half entertaining. Nope.
Yeah. The part I think you've got to factor in is what would happen if Vinny Testaverde went down after, QB1 went down. And unfortunately, that's what happened with the Jets. The defense again played horribly. Now, the Colts already had over 100 yards by the start of the second quarter. They're averaging 8 yards per attempt at halftime. And they had the most rushing yards of any team in a single game this season by the end of the third quarter. I mean, you literally couldn't play less impactful defense for the Jets if you tried. I think if you listening right now were on that field, you may have done a better job than the Jets defenders on Thursday night. I mean, it was unbelievable how awful they played.
You know what also sucks?
Well, just quickly, offensively, they suck too because Mike White, he was playing fine. He was 7 of 11, 95 yards and a touchdown before he left early with a wrist injury, and Josh Johnson came in. He played up well with 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, but the lead was so insurmountable that it didn't really matter. They scored 30 points, Matt.
Yeah. And the 30 points were look, by halftime it was garbage time. Okay?
Yeah.
They were up 28-10 in
Right.
Indianapolis. They scored 2 more touchdowns in the third and a field goal in the fourth, make it 45. But this game was out of control long before the Jets mounted, I wouldn't call it a comeback, but garbage time
Offense,
points.
Life. Yeah.
Yes.
The Eagles put more in effort against Oregon Ducks, and they're number 3 in the nation. At least that game was competitive at halftime.
But now, if White had stayed the whole game, that's the other point that you bring up, which is right on the money. If White had stayed healthy and not gotten hurt and stayed in the game, wouldn't have made much difference.
Yeah. He would have had more touchdowns.
45-30.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and that's honestly the worrying part. Losing Mike White performed really good last week, and I thought good this week as well. And it's not taking anything away from Josh Johnson, but again, when the game's already out of reach at halftime, how effective are those stats? He played good for what he was able to do, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. But again, they're already out of the game. So for the Colts, it was about not getting injured, especially seeing how much injuries have ravaged the NFL as a whole. Whether it's something like Derrick Henry being out for the season or just these Giants and Jets teams, missing so many guys and Mike White being one of them. But yeah, defensively, they've been terrible. They've given up 54, 31, and 45 points in their last 3 contests. No NFL team's going to win a game giving up 40 points per contest.
No, of course not. And even if they scored a lot themselves, they're not going to win reliably.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
No.
You have to have a defense. Well, at the very least, that's the reason why all these great offensive quarterbacks who racked up numbers never won anything. Dan Marino or Dan Fouts or run down the list of guys who have these impressive yardage numbers and touchdown pass numbers don't necessarily have a lot of rings. But then you have guys that do. Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Troy Aikman, run down the list of those guys. But those guys also had great defenses. They had more balanced teams, and they, as a result, have more Super Bowl rings. But then you have an Eli Manning where his proponents say he should be among those guys, and the answer is the Giants' defense won those Super Bowls.
I believe. I'd argue. I know what you're going to say, but I'd argue both have as much to do with those rings. Because, yes, the defense held Brady and the Patriots to 14 points. But at the same time, you're going up against the other best defense in the league. And Manning made some quite literally miraculous throws in both games to get them the win.
Exactly. I think the first 2 Giants Super Bowl teams were definitely defensive driven. No doubt about it. They had Lawrence Taylor.
That's for
I
sure.
believe that the second two were more balanced.
You can even add the 2000 teams that they ended up losing to the Ravens, but
Yeah.
no one's really remembering Carey as that much of an offensive guru. It was really heavily relied on the Giants' defense that year.
Yeah, and that's their tradition, and it's worked. Great offense sells tickets, as Kurt Hilton always says. The long as I've known him, he's been saying this. Offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. And yes, including the Patriots' defense. If Tom Brady didn't have a defense, he'd be Dan Marino.
Yeah, and that's really been, again, the struggles for both these New York teams. You just see it today. We just said it 5 minutes ago. The reason the Giants team won was because the defense stepped up, unlike in Monday where the defense wasn't able to step up during crunch time. The defense could have easily folded, given up a game-tying or go-ahead touchdown and two-point conversion to a Raiders offense, which is usually pretty good. But, defense stepped up, got those turnovers, and it was the game changer. The Jets, they don't have a defense. And it's just a system-wide failure as a whole that you wonder, what is Robert Saleh doing? This is his bread and butter. How is this falling apart so bad? There's just a lot of guys there who just look lost. Linebackers, their tackling is just abysmal. They get a hand on a guy and they think the play's over, or they just fly right through offensive linemen. Bryce Hall, so many times he was beat on a number of really big third down completions. Ashton Davis, God bless him, he looked lost out there. It was tough to watch. And for both these teams, the Jets especially more so, after the past 3 weeks, they really need to step it up defensively and find those guys and create a system where they can really shut down opposing offenses, because teams are just having their way with them, going up and down the field at their will.
You know what? Looking at the rest of the league, you remember that great Jet game they had against the Bengals?
Yeah.
The Bengals lost to the Browns today, 41-16. They've dropped to 5-4, but the Browns stomped on them. Makes you wonder. Lose to the Jets, and there goes your season.
Yeah, it feels that way. I think the Browns do just have, defensively the Browns stepped up as well, because you remember it was a pick six from Ward for Cleveland, who ended up starting the scoring for the Browns. So it wasn't even the offense, but yeah, the Browns started the game up 7-0 because of a pick six, and ultimately Hill stepped up for them as well, knocking down Burrow fourth down attempt, and that ultimately led to Baker Mayfield leading a 60-yard touchdown drive into the hands of Darius People-Jones. So, I thought the Browns defense really stepped up, and the Bengals offense really struggled, and you're starting to see holes there to where once you shut down the Bengals through the air, they really don't have much of a response. And the Browns really stepped up. And I think they also played with a chip on their shoulder, because with all the Odell Beckham news, him being placed on waivers, no one at the moment claiming him. So he's going to try to, show himself to the rest of the league and try to sign up a contender, according to reports. So I think the Browns, seeing that, knowing that, wanted to show that we don't need Odell Beckham. And for this past week, they showed that they didn't need him.
Well, it's not the only team that has shown that they don't need him.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody eventually picks him up because he is talented.
He is.
The baggage.
Well, I was going to say the injuries. He hasn't looked like himself. Yeah. And, there's a lot of videos going around. He hasn't really gotten the ball a lot. That's true. But at the times he has, Mayfield did look his way. He dropped about half as many attempts as he did complete them. And, that's really been an issue with him since coming back from those foot injuries, even as a Giant right before the trade. He really hasn't been the Beckham Jr. we've seen since 2015-16. And that sucks, because he was a phenomenal receiver during that time. We all remember the one-handed catch against Dallas, but there's just so many plays, and he really commanded so much of that offense during that playoff contending year for the Giants, just with his speed and elusiveness on the slant. if he goes back to being that three-dimensional player with his speed, his looseness, and great catching ability, he'll show he's got some worth in the league. But right now, I can't blame the Browns, especially when they got a guy like Nick Chubb just running through the Cincinnati defense for 137 yards and a pair of touchdowns. This Browns team, I think they're legit. They were really a couple plays away from going to the Super Bowl last year. I think they're going to fight hard in the AFC playoffs. And this Bengals team, they got a lot to think about before their next game. But I think it was an indictment of several teams, I thought, who really have a lot of questions surrounding them after this week, Matt.
Okay. Let's turn to the toilet bowl. I say toilet bowl because it's rare in the NFL that two teams play and neither one scores double figures in points. I'm talking about Jacksonville, Buffalo.
Yeah, that was the game I was referring to.
The final.
Yep. The Buffalo, a lot of questions coming out of this weekend. I don't think anyone tabbed the Jacksonville Jaguars with, 3 wins total in their last 2 seasons, coming out with not only a victory, but a 9-6 victory. Josh Allen, his first touchdownless game, coming up against a Jacksonville defense. Oh my gosh.
Well, Jacksonville defense came up with 2 big interceptions.
Oh, yeah, it's true. They showed up.
They forced a turnover on downs.
The Josh Allen who stepped up. Yeah, the Josh Allen who stepped up today was on the Jaguars, and it was the defensive lineman getting to him a couple times and getting to him, again, forcing those big plays defensively, forcing the fumbles. And the Jaguars, and the Bills honestly just looked unprepared. Like they literally just tried sleepwalking through the game and just tried, relying on what worked in the past about putting in the effort, number one. And number two, just the energy. Just watching that game, Matt, you could tell Jacksonville was on that next gear the entire time. And the Bills struggled to even get anywhere close to that range.
Yeah, of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars don't have an offense to speak of, and this is the only way they can win a game.
Yeah,
but
wow.
Well, I'll tell you something, though. You know what? It kind of reminds me of those 1970s Giant teams. It was the only way they could win a game because their offense was so bad.
Yeah.
But it does tell you, obviously, that a defense can dominate a game to a point where, 30 years ago, Stony Brook won 2 games by 3-0 scores.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. One was against Fordham, one was against Iona, same year. But, yeah. But defense and the offense.
I honestly don't remember a game in my lifetime where the highest scoring offense in the league no-showed against, I don't know if the Jaguars are the worst, but they've got to be among the bottom, defenses in the league. I mean, this is Josh Allen we saw back in 2018 when he was a rookie/second-year guy, where he was just throwing up prayers and hoping his receivers would come down with the ball. Threw 2 picks, as you said, a fumble as well. They only had 1 drive inside the Jacksonville 20. I mean, it's unbelievable how Buffalo no-showed this game. But hats off to the Jaguars. And I think Matthew Wright's got to be the player of the week, being the lone scorer for the Jaguars, pulling off an incredible upset. Yeah, I think this has got to be the wake-up call for the Bills if they want to succeed in their Super Bowl ambitions. You can't just, sleepwalk into games and hope everything, ends up the way it does.
You know what? We got to talk about it, much as we don't want to. Green Bay, Kansas City was a game everybody was paying attention to because of Aaron Rodgers proving that he's not smart enough to host Jeopardy. First of all, yes, Kansas City comes off a should-win game. They won. They beat the Giants, not through no fault of their own. And they go up against a Green Bay team that's running essentially a rookie quarterback. I think if Aaron Rodgers were playing in this game, it would not have wound up 13-7 Kansas City. So Kansas City catches a break. Green Bay will live. But this game was featured at, the 4 o'clock game. Remember, because the Jets played on Thursday, you watch the Giants at 1, and normally you have the Jets. But no, this was your featured game on Fox. And wasn't overly impressed.
No, I agree. It was honestly not a good showing by either team. And it's not like these past couple Chiefs wins, they're not nothing. They're obviously going to continue to build up to try and get a playoff spot. It's incredible we have to, question if the Chiefs are a playoff contending team because the past month, they really haven't looked like it. But yeah, as you said, the offense just hasn't been there for them this season. And they've looked really stagnant against this Packers team. And defensively, I thought that was a difference maker. Spags calling the right plays defensively for Kansas City, really attacking, getting through the O-line of the Packers, really attacking Jordan Love, not giving him too much room to really throw the ball or work inside the pocket. That was a difference maker. But, you're not going to be a Super Bowl team walking the tightrope against honestly mid-average teams or even a team which is good like the Packers missing their key piece in Aaron Rodgers, someone who I think is going to be gone for a long time if the NFL hands out a punishment for him lying about his vaccination status.
Well, fortunately for the Packers in the NFC North, they have a huge lead. They come out of this game 7-2. Minnesota's 3-5, so is Chicago, and the Lions are 0-8. So the chances are good that they'll survive it, whatever punishment is meted out to Rodgers. But this was a game that they could have won even without him, and they didn't. What they did was they gave the Kansas City Chiefs some new life because now they're a half game behind the Raiders. The Raiders have a game in hand. They're 5-3, and they're right up there with the Chargers, too, who are also 5-3. Denver's 5-4. That AFC West is the best division top to bottom in the NFL, and it's a free-for-all right now. So, yes, they have division opponents coming up, but their chances have improved greatly by 2 games that, were gimmies.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams I think in their free-for-all. As you said, with the Bills, their loss today, Patriots are 5-4. They're a half a game behind Buffalo. And they're on a 3-game win streak following their victory today versus the Panthers, 24-6. And not only that, but the AFC West, there's a lot of question marks there with the Broncos and Chiefs. They're 5-4. Las Vegas and LA, they're 5-3. So it's fun now because there's a lot of parity, I think, between a lot of these teams. So you don't really know who's necessarily gonna get hot. I think the Patriots are on a roll.
North.
Yeah, the AFC North as well. Yeah,
the Ravens. Cincinnati's worst team in the AFC North. They're 5-4.
Exactly, and they were the best team in the North 2 weeks ago. So it's really about that, just stacking wins, as Coach Fermin likes to say. But again, just getting hot. You get hot now during the heart of the season, it's going to help make the chances better. Ultimately, when you get to the end of the season and you deal with more of that wear and tear, we've seen a lot of these teams deal with already, like the Titans, who pulled off an incredible upset just now against the Los Angeles Rams to improve to, I think, 7-2 on the season.
I'll tell you what, though. One of the reasons why we had such high hopes for the Jets coming off last week's win is because at 2-5, all they had to do was get hot, get on a winning streak, and they'd be right back in contention in the NFC East. And while that, of course, with every passing week puts them further and further back, you're wondering if White does have a bounce-back week next week or something like that. You're thinking, wait a minute. I mean, both teams at this stage of the season are actually still in striking distance if they get hot. But that's such a huge if with the talent on the field.
And it just feels so unlikely, too, just how the past couple of seasons have gone. It's sad when you look at the Giants again and you see them 3-6, and this is the best they've looked in 5 years. It's not a good thing when having twice as many losses as you do wins is better than average for your team. But yeah, you're right. Somehow they're still in it. The Cowboys lost today to Denver 30-16. Chargers beat the Eagles 27-24. Washington didn't play, so the Giants were the only team to win in the NFC East and get within 3 games of the lead, tied for second now with Philly. But that's the interesting thing. With how I think just unpredictable everything has been, the only teams that are really out of it right now are the Lions, or 0-8. Texans are 1-8, and that's really it. Jaguars are 2-6, but they won today, and even the Dolphins at 2-7, they won today too. So don't want to rule them out too much right now. There's a lot of teams right now in that limbo, and this is the time where you're going to see who's a playoff contender and who's a pretender. So it's going to be a fun few weeks of football.
It will shake out the next 3 or 4 weeks. Or maybe not. Maybe everybody goes 2-2.
Everyone goes 2-2. I might lose my mind.
That's exactly the way the NFL wants it.
That's true. That's the moneymaker.
Yeah, because the more teams are in contention, the more fan interest there is, the more betting there is, the more everything there is. And
a lot of people must be upset with their bets falling. Jacksonville in particular. But even that Atlanta Saints game where the Falcons pulled off the 27-25 win.